more British. All right, so I'm a baker. I make baked goods for the gay and lesbian community where my shop is, but I don't want to make cakes for gay weddings because it's against my religion. What's the status of that case? What's going on? Allison is going to do that. My good friend Allison Cohen, host of Legalese, but also from Cohen Law Services. There's two things I want to get to before we get to that cake case, because you blew me away with the information you have on this case. I didn't even know this stuff. But let's go to, you have an incredible workshop coming up that I'll actually be at. I won't be presenting, don't panic anyone. I'll
but
just
he
be
will
there.
be having breakfast, I hope.
I'll have breakfast and I'll say hi to everybody, but then it's up to the experts. But tell us about this workshop.
So Friday, March 31st, 2017, it's at the good old Doubletree Hilton Hotel. All important events of my life happen there.
All right.
It begins at 8:30. It's all in transition planning. So if you have a child from 11 to 18 and you need to know what the next steps are, if your child has a disability,
Yep.
you know, 1 in 5 people in this country are living with a disability, 1 in 68 are diagnosed on the autism spectrum, any disability. How do they transition to a job? What does housing look like? How do they leave school? Maybe they're going to go to college. We're going to go through all the laws. We have 3 great speakers that are going to talk about transition planning in special education, the steps after that, applying for SSI, SSDI if you need to. How do you set that up? And so
it's something very important to consider. My brother and his wife, my niece, who's wonderful, has transitioned. She has some special needs. She has transitioned into adulthood. Is incredible, but you have to know what you're doing.
Right.
You have to understand. And by the way, last time, folks from Western Mass came all the way out.
I know.
for this, and I was happy to see them. So, folks, I want you to come out. This is important. It's free. It is invaluable.
Right.
So we got to make sure that we get you out for that. Okay.
So just go on the website, CohenLawServices.com, click on Lady Law.
Before we go to the cake, one final thing.
Yes.
All right. How is it, though, and maybe this is, a lengthy answer, how is it that a judge in Hawaii can shut the whole thing down? Just one judge, one guy.
Right.
Boom. Now, this is what I think. I'm shutting it down.
Right. So, again, it goes back to the separation of powers that we have and the checks and balances. So, inevitably, until that decision comes up the pipe to the appeals court and then the Supreme Court, they still have a role, the judiciary has a role in being able to make a decision and issue a nationwide injunction. So what bothers me is that you could have one rogue judge, that comes out and, like, when you're reading this order, supports it on what I believe is immaterial evidence, statements that were made, is really groping to find standing for the state, saying that, proprietary interests are going to be hurt. Brings in one plaintiff this time, a man, a doctor whose wife's mother can't come into the country for a short period of time, and then utilizing that to springboard an entire nation's injunction that will now prevent President Trump's very carefully and well-drafted executive order from going into place. So
basically, what you're saying to me is, Jim, that's how the system works.
Currently,
that's the balance of power, and that judge can do that.
Right.
You have the right to appeal it.
Right.
It's going to take time and money to appeal it.
Right.
Now, it's one thing for the Trump administration to appeal it because that's our money and our time.
Right.
But if you're an individual and that happens to you,
it's
time and money.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
So we'll keep an eye on it.
Yes, I'm glad you explained that, because I know a lot of people are asking, like, how can this happen?
Right.
One person.
Right.
All right. Now, let's go to the story of the wedding cake or the non-wedding cake. This is fascinating.
The non-wedding cake. So you've got Masterpiece Cake Shop versus the Colorado Civil Rights Commission, and that is being set. It's today actually set for conference before the court, and they are considering a very interesting case because Jack Phillips is a cake artist.
Okay.
And he owns a custom cake business with his wife, and he declined to design a cake that was honoring the same-sex marriage couple because he has sincerely held religious beliefs. Now, it's important to note that they make lots of cakes for lesbian and gay clients, but they did not want to make them in terms of a wedding cake.
Okay.
That was their only
exception. So everybody who's gay and lesbian is welcome to come in, buy whatever you want, order whatever you want. but we're not going to do a wedding cake.
Exactly.
I got it.
So they get sued. It goes up to the appeals court, Colorado Court of Appeals. They find that, or actually they sue. They find that there's no violation of their free speech, of their free exercise clause, because they felt that he needed to basically comply with what the Colorado Civil Rights Commission determined, was that you need to make the cake.
He's discriminating.
Yes.
He's basically, they're equating that with, Allison, I own a diner, and I say, black people, no, I'm sorry.
Right.
You can't come in.
Right. And so we have to think about this question, Jim. What does the First Amendment do? Does it prohibit the government from telling us what we can say? And so that's what is at issue in this case. And one of the things that was interesting was when I read through, the briefs and the lower court's opinions, the Colorado Civil Rights Commission said, look, you're not applying this rule or this ban, for example, to an African-American cake artist who might refuse to create a cake promoting white supremacists for the Aryan nation. You're not applying this rule to an Islamic cake artist who wants to refuse creating a cake denigrating the Quran for the Westboro Baptist Church.
Right.
You're not applying this rule to 3 secular cake artists who refuse to create cakes opposing same-sex marriage for a Christian patron. So why should Jack Phillips be banned from his politely declining to create a cake celebrating same-sex marriage on religious grounds when he's happy to create cakes for gay and lesbian clients for other things?
That's incredible, because in those other cases,
Right.
You go to an African American baker, and I want you to, which is deplorable.
It's deplorable.
But I want you to
There's no
make, I
doubt.
want you to make a cake that's why don't I have the same rights as this gay couple who wants to come in and have a cake made, and that's against my religion?
Right.
Denigrate the Quran, which
Right.
no one should do. You shouldn't denigrate anyone's religion, but go in, make me a cake that denigrates the Quran.
Right. Right.
No.
So
Now I understand this even more.
okay. So, and we're thinking about public accommodations law. When does it violate the First Amendment? Jack Phillips said, look, I'm going to express myself in a way that is in my good conscience, within my religious beliefs. And if they're sincerely held religious beliefs, how do I know? Because I still don't discriminate against gay and lesbian clients. I'm happy to make them every kind of cake. It's
Just
just
not
in
a
this
wedding
case,
cake.
I don't believe in same-sex marriage, and so I'm sticking with my religious beliefs. 3 years ago, the justices declined to review a similar decision by a New Mexico Supreme Court, holding that a photography studio had violated the state's anti-discrimination laws when they refused to photograph a same-sex commitment ceremony. So this is interesting that this is back up. It's being put before the justices today.
Yeah.
We will see if they're going to accept it. I think they might.
Are they punting when they do this? Is it because they don't want to bring up the issue of the same sex and
well, think about 3 years ago, Jim, was before same-sex marriage was approved.
Oh yeah.
So that didn't get approved till just in June of this past year, June of 2016, right? When all the rainbow flags went up, that was the big moment. And so now any case after that, you really have to look at.
You have to look at it through the guise
look
of
at those lenses, right? So, also this case, the cake case, conflicts with a lot of other decisions regarding free speech for the protection of art, which is kind of like this case that we have before the Supreme Court with the slants. Remember we previewed that
Oh,
case?
yes.
And they're actually
they're coming into the studio.
April
the
22nd,
slants.
they will be here.
That's great.
And can you get the USPTO to go ahead and trademark your name if it has some kind of religious discrimination, principle, so to speak, attached?
So for folks who don't know,
Right.
they're a band. They happen to be Asian.
Right.
Slants is a derogatory term.
Right.
But they wanted to name themselves the Slants. They wanted to trademark it, obviously. That's your intellectual property, your
Absolutely.
band, your name, your music. I can't say the Rolling Stones without having to pay them
There you
if I'm
go.
going to use it for commerce. And so can you do that? And in the past, haven't there been other cases where they've prevented people from trademarking something that may have been offensive?
They absolutely have. I mean, and we've talked about cases even with the public license plate cases. I mean, that's
Right.
a little bit different because it's a state, but with the Confederate flag.
Right.
But this is private speech, Jim, right? And the band themselves are Asian, so they're wearing this as really a badge of pride to say, we want to overcome that stereotype.
Yeah.
But they are going to lose relatively maybe millions and millions of dollars if they can't hold on to that name and put that on everything that they put out. So that's before the court right now. Yeah.
So then they're going to be in. That's going to be great. And so this case now in front of the Supreme Court, the wedding cake.
Right.
Okay. We've got time for one more quick thing. Do you have something else that you want to put on top?
Yeah.
You want to put a cherry on top of the
let me
wedding
put a cherry
cake?
I'm going to put a cherry on top. This is a little bit different, but we're going to turn to this idea of the Fourth Amendment, qualified immunity, and what that looks like in terms of what they're calling concepts of causation, big words, and provocation.
Well, I just completely
went right
glossed
over. Went right over, and that's why I'm going to break it down. So very quickly, on Wednesday, March 22nd, we've got the 8th Justice Court. They're going to hear arguments in a case called the County of Los Angeles versus Mendez, which is a very interesting case because you've got a house, you've got kind of a shack in the back.
Yeah.
You've got cops that are out there that had been looking for somebody that was, a felon.
Okay.
As they go into the one portion of the house, they announce that they're there. But then another cop goes to the back, sort of the shack area, and two homeless people, a man and his, not wife, but his girlfriend who was pregnant was there. They didn't announce, the cop didn't announce, and he ended up shooting both of them multiple times. And so this now came up through the Ninth Circuit. And then it's now before the Supreme Court. They're going to hear it because they want to understand, first of all, a couple of things. One, what is this idea that you need to announce as a police officer to come in to say, look, we're here, hands up, whatever.
Police phrase, hands up.
You got it. And one of the things that the individual, they weren't killed, but the individual that he has his leg amputated, had a BB gun next to him, but he didn't know who it was. And he had said, and other witnesses had testified, who is it? Like, if I had known it was you, we would have put our hands up.
I wouldn't have put but I felt like my home was being invaded.
Exactly.
Very interesting.
So, this comes again to this idea of qualified immunity. And, our police are under attack a lot, which is, it's a dangerous job. And so, how do we look at that in terms of, did he really, quote unquote, cause their injuries? We know he shot them, but did he not follow protocol?
Right,
Is he entitled to immunity?
And were their rights not violated, though?
Right.
Allison, we're out of time. I'm sorry. But listen, folks, Allison Cohen, Legalese, we barely scratched the surface. This is the kind of stuff you get from her show and a lot of self-help stuff from her show every Saturday at 11 o'clock right here on WTAG. You can listen with the iHeartRadio app in Western Mass if you can't pick up TAG. And, of course, you've got that great workshop going on, Special Needs Transitional Workshop. You can go to CohenLawServices.com and get more. She is my First Lady of Law, everybody's First Lady of Law. Allison, thank you so much.
Thank you, Colossus.
And happy St. Patrick's Day.
You too, my friend.
All right, don't go anywhere, folks, on this St. Patrick's Day. I have a final thought. You're listening to the Jim Polito Show, your safe space.